to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending February 11th. We've got another big show tonight. We've got our guy that takes us behind the counter, William Bernanke from CG Analytics, will join us to recap how things worked out in the Super Bowl for CG. We'll have another edition of Handicappers Corner. Ralph and I are going to break down some season numbers, the money earners and burners for this year. And then we're going to break down the big weekend games in college and NBA. And, of course, at the end of the show, it is best bet time. Mark Seidel is behind the controls. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. Let's get this party started and bring in our first guest, William. Thank you for joining the show once again. You can follow William at the Moneyline Guy on Twitter. And Will, the Super Bowl, we for the first time in recent years, Nevada did not break the handle record, actually quite a bit off of the year before. But nonetheless, it turned out to be a good Super Bowl for the Nevada books. All told, everybody, all of these pools are put together when they release these numbers. $10.7 million profit reported in the Super Bowl. How did CG do?
Well, we did real well, and it wasn't until 2 to 3 hours, prior to kickoff that we really got the idea of the Rams money coming in, saw the Rams money coming in, suspected it would happen, anticipated every, word you can think of, but it finally showed up, and the money line on the Rams ended up closing at plus 112 with us, and we knew that at that point we needed the Patriots to win the game, and ideally the Rams to cover, but that's asking too much for a game to land in such a small, margin there. So we did great with the money line, not so well with the Patriots covering the point spread, but the money line bets outweighed the Patriots covering, so we did great with that.
Will, do you think that the handle being down was because the Rams are still new to L.A. and don't have a following, as well as people being tired of the Patriots?
I don't think as much the Rams. I think it was tired of the Patriots, as you said. The bettors, you talk to people, you just hear it all over. They're tired of the Patriots being in there. They're boring, especially the way they played in their first two games, where the Charger game non-competitive. Even the Chief game, it wasn't exciting until the fourth quarter, because the Patriots really took the air out of the ball for most of that game until fireworks took off in the fourth there. And then you saw the Super Bowl. So fans are just tired of the Patriots, and that reflects in the handle.
Now, you're going to have a lot of people right away say, now you got all these other states out there taking action, and that hurt. It took some of the money away from Nevada. I tell you what, I was on the Strip all weekend, and there was as many people here for the Super Bowl this year than I've seen every other year. It was insane. All of the poker rooms in town, and that's when the gamblers are in town. If there's not a big poker tournament like the World Series of Poker during that, all of the wait list around town, Bellagio, Aria, there were 50 people on the list for all of the games. You couldn't get on a poker table in town on the weekend. So it was crazy. I think where some of it had to slow down, and maybe you can answer this one, the in-game wagering, was it slower this year than in the last couple years? Because we had a Super Bowl where there really was no movement.
Changes, yeah.
Yeah, they're not going back and forth. The only thing that kept changing in this game was the over-under kept dropping. Did that slow down, and did that affect some of the numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely did. Less opportunities for momentum swings and emotion. Let's be honest, emotion plays in as a factor with live betting with a lot of people. Maybe not, pros and stuff like that, but certainly the casual bettor will play on emotion, live betting, and with the lower scores and just less scoring, less, first downs, less yardage, everything. There's less emotion involved, and that reflects in the handle.
Well, you said that the late money that came in on the Rams on the money line, this was a positive result on the side. What was with the total? I mean, did you guys make money on the total? We saw that number drop, but what was the final handle at CG relative to winning or losing on the total?
Yeah, we did real well with the total. Not as well with the money line, of course, but a lot of that early money was sharp money coming in on the under anyway. Once that number's kind of stabilized, teasers, parlays were all to the over, most of it to the over, about 7 out of 10 tickets. So that game staying under all numbers, under in the second half, teasers, you name it, that was a great result for us. I'm sure you could have guessed that considering how every Super Bowl, the career, in recent memory, bettors are on the over, at least the majority of bets.
And, Will, that's a perfect example of Joes versus pros.
Yeah.
All of the pros, including myself on all the shows that I did, I was leaning to the under in the game. Everybody was leaning to the under the game. You saw the early movement at the beginning. The pros hit that number when it was high because they knew it wasn't going to be there on game day. But yet you have the public that can outweigh the pros. This is the one game, the Super Bowl, where the public, there are so many more people playing the game. And as you said, not only on straight bets, but hooking them up in teasers and parlays. I guarantee you, your favorite combination of teasers with the public was taking the Rams up over the touchdown and taking tease the under down and going over.
Yeah, that actually was the most popular teaser. Rams, plus any type of points, exotic teasers, you name it, and over in the game. And that one wasn't never really close to hitting. Maybe the Rams on the side, if they make that last field goal, at the end there would have been a good one. But certainly the total was never in doubt, obviously. That was as far off as you could ever be.
In general, how did the props fare for CG?
We did real well with the props. And this, again, plays to the low-scoring game. High-profile players just not playing up to their normal expected numbers. No matter how you calculate some of these guys playing, I'm sure there's a lot of people, again, casual bettors who are taking over yardage for, Brady's passing yards or Gurley's rushing yards or whatever, those type of numbers, and they were all under, and those were the main props. Those are where you get your volume, maybe not the biggest bets, but certainly just lots of tickets written on those type of props, and they never had a chance.
I never quite had a Super Bowl like this when my top prop bet was the second half and overtime will be higher scoring than the first. And then during the third period, I'm going, what if this game's 3-0? I'll just jump off my balcony now. But,
oh, man, that would have been as bad as it gets. But you got plenty of scoring there.
Tell us if you have a specific prop that was the best result for the house. And then in the same context, was there a prop that the house lost a significant amount more on than the other props?
Yeah, these are always props that you never would expect when you look back, but combined field goals of the game was the best prop for the house. I think it was 3.5, and combined field goals for the game went under, of course. That was a great result, best result for us. And the worst one, will there be 3 unanswered scores? Answer was no, ended up being no, and people were on that, and that never got there, and that was a bad result for us.
Did you have anyone take the prop, will there be 3 scores total?
If we even put that out, I wouldn't even know how to price it.
I remember a prop, it was probably a few years ago, and it turned out not to be a good prop for your book. It was a Sunday night game, and it was the Arizona and Seattle when they both had good defenses.
Yep.
But there was a prop, would there be no touchdown scored in the game? And that's something that just never happened. Somebody gets a touchdown, and they didn't. But I do believe somebody, I hate to bring up bad memories, but I remember that because, our good buddy Matthew Holt was still working there at the time, and I had done a few shows with him, and that was not a good prop result for a Sunday night football game that doesn't have the handle that you would have on a Super Bowl to absorb it on a bunch of winning props.
Yeah, I remember that game. I think there were like 3 or 4 missed field goals in the second half and into overtime. It was one of the ugliest games I'd seen in recent memory. Ended up in a tie game, if I'm not mistaken.
And they, I think somebody ended up kicking a field goal, but it was like nobody scored a touchdown, and there was that.
It was like 9-6 or 6-6, something like that. It was tied late into overtime there. Somebody must have, I guess somebody did win that game, but one of those games you want to forget for many reasons. That prop and the aesthetics.
Yeah, but see, our listeners will. I hate to do it to you, but they love hearing those stories.
Yeah, there's enough money to go around. There's plenty for us to lose.
Hey, college basketball is now going to take center stage. We got some big games this weekend. I know Virginia and Duke's going to be the marquee matchup of the weekend to see that, and two of the top three teams in the country, and who's going to solidify themselves as king of the hill in the ACC. But let me ask you right now, and I know things will change as we get to March Madness, is there one or two teams right now that CG would not like to see win the national championship? Do you have any futures liability on any particular teams that the house really doesn't want?
Yeah, I'm sure people can guess what our biggest liability is. Not the highest ticket count, but biggest liability because of the size of the bets is Duke right now. So they're our biggest liability. Highest ticket count, and following close in liability is Virginia. Gonzaga's third in ticket count and also in liability. And we've also had some significant liabilities on these other teams. Houston, Michigan, and Tennessee's late to the party, but bettors are jumping on them, especially in the last couple weeks.
Can you tell us who, I'm sure your top three teams are, as far as odds-wise, are Duke, Zag, and Virginia. But can you tell us your top 5 or 6? And then also mention Nevada for all the locals, where they currently stand with their money, with what the odds are to win the championship.
Oh, I don't have the odds right in front of me, but I do know with Nevada, we've taken a pretty decent amount of bets on them, especially after last year's run. People came in right away with Nevada before the season. They came in, as preseason top, 10, top 15. So we took some good action on them, and they've been steady through the year. I think they're like 20-1 in that range right now, Nevada, to win it all.
Hey, as you said, the obvious with Duke, with the liability. How many of those future tickets were written the night that they played Kentucky and slaughtered them on the opening game, and then the next day?
I know we wrote that same, the morning after that, we wrote, I think we wrote somewhere in the range of 30 to 40 tickets on Duke. Small ones, nothing outrageous. We got the bigger bets, even the signing period when those guys, all joined forces. But Duke, we took a lot of bets that morning after Duke beat Kentucky. People were just enamored with them after one game. Obviously an overreaction, but, it could be the right reaction. We'll see what happens.
With the NBA trade deadline passing now, you can get back to figuring out what these teams are going to do and put official numbers on them. I know, like last night, normally there's a lot of, the books bring the games out, the numbers for the next day. NBA, there's always a couple games that they don't have lines on overnight. But last night, it was a very quiet night with overnight lines because everybody waiting to see all of these trades, which rumors become true and which ones don't. Have you had any shift in the market today with what has happened? Has anybody jumped on anybody with the futures, or have you guys moved anybody?
Yeah, we took some bets on the 76ers to win the Eastern Conference. They were 440 prior to these transactions. Now they're actually plus 300. So we took some bets. We did move the line originally, then we took some bets, and now we're settled in at plus 300 to win the Eastern Conference. They're still not the favorite, though. Toronto is, but the Sixers are gaining some steam there.
Toronto, definitely a team that's going to be reckoned with. Will, how hard is it, like these first couple games now, with the roster changes? Because, in theory, and Ralph and I did a video earlier this week about this, is that the public reaction immediately is always going to be, oh, this team just got so-and-so. So, now we got to make them, they're better. So that the public thinks that. So now you've got to set a number on the team anticipating the market's going to run to them because of the perception. But the reality is, when you put a new guy into a lineup, that's not an instant success. They got to learn to play with the guys that are already there and figure out the new rotations, and everybody's role changes a little bit because of the addition and subtraction of guys to the roster. And I think, actually, for me, I like to go against the perceived improved team for the first couple games until they figure things out, because they're going to be overpriced.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at past scenarios like this, which you got to go back to look at your history of data, anything in these scenarios where you have a big trade mid-season. Off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of anything, but there's plenty I can go back to and look at those teams. Look how they reacted in the first 15 games with the new addition, especially if it's a high-profile player, and then see price it accordingly. Now, history usually repeats itself when you put a player like that in the mix. I mean, you look at Kyrie Irving this year. First, when the Celtics started the year, they weren't covering spreads at all. They're playing better now, and not where they want to be, but you can use that as a somewhat of a sample where it's sort of like a trade because he didn't play all the end of last year. You're adding him to that team this year, and you're doing similar things. Jimmy Butler goes to the Sixers. They struggle a little their first few games, starting to settle in there. So this type of pattern just continues when you bring in a high-profile player, and until everyone's comfortable with each other and the system is in place.
But yet the average betting public, that perception is this team's better and they want them right away. And that's this.
Absolutely.
You say that, history has a way of repeating itself. I always say history repeats itself because nobody paid attention the first time. And it just happens again. And I'm
unbelievable.
And the Boston one that you brought out at the beginning of the season, Dave Cokin and myself did a preview to the NBA season and what you look for when you're betting early. And that was actually one of the things that I said for the listeners. I said, go against the Boston Celtics to start the season because the perception is going to be, now they're healthy. They got Kyrie back. They have, now I'm blanking, the guy that got hurt last year in the first game.
Yep.
Gordon Hayward. So now they're healthy and everything's going to go. Well, the problem is they never played any games together last year.
Yep.
He got hurt like minutes into the game. So it was that new learning process. Yeah, you play preseason games, but it's not the same thing when you actually get into the game. In their first 20 games of the season, they were a losing proposition, and doing what I said was the right move, and then they gained ground later, and that's the same thing that you'll see with all these trades. And good stuff as always, Will. Tell our listeners, the app, we beat it to death on this show, but boy, last week, if you're playing the Super Bowl and you go into any book in town, those lines were out the door to play, the Super Bowl a couple hours beforehand. And you got the app, you don't have to deal with that problem. You just can sit there wherever you're at and make your wagers. And when you come to town, I can't emphasize it enough. I look at all these people that get frustrated in the sports books on the weekend, standing in lines to make bets and everything. Go to the line once. Open up an app, sign up. It takes you 5 minutes to do so. Fund the account, make all your wagers all weekend, wherever you're at, and then when you're ready to leave town, you just take your money out. It's the same as cashing a ticket, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we're running a special, promotion here through March Madness where you can sign up for an account and you get up to a $68 credit to your account. So whatever you put in there, it's matched up to $68, and once you sign up right on through the NCAA tournament.
Free money.
Absolutely. Got to do it. Got to take advantage of that, and who knows? You could turn it into $100,000.
There you go. All right, Will. Hey, as always, Will, we appreciate you stopping by and sharing the information. Let us look behind the counter things. And sorry for bringing up that one bad prop that I had to, but
Thanks, Will.
It's all good. It's nice it helps me learn from mistakes.
All right, good stuff, Will. We will talk to you next week, hopefully, if your schedule permits. Guys, we're going to step out for a quick break. When we come back, Ralph and I will be doing Handicappers Corner. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It's Handicappers Corner time. And tonight, Ralph and I are going to take a look at some of the teams that have been money earners, money burners, and we're going to talk quickly about the NBA draft. And Ralph, let's just start off, not the draft, the trade deadline, I should say. Let's start right there. A lot of teams making a lot of moves at the deadline. We see this every year with the teams. And the one thing I want to say is, to the listeners out there, don't overreact to these trades the first couple days. Yeah, some teams are going to look like they really improved their roster, and you're going to want to jump on them. But here's the thing. Vegas is going to make you pay a price for the new teams that, got a key player. And you got to remember, it's going to take time for these guys to find their way into the lineup, in the rotation, how the guys are going to play together, the chemistry. Sometimes when you get another big star, who's going to be the alpha dog now? Do you want to take that shot, or are you going to put an extra pass in there to get the new guy involved? And all of that can lead to a lack of consistency and cohesiveness for that team and the new player. And I say that those teams are actually a bet against the first few games.
Yeah, especially, a team like the Clippers. The Clippers traded 4 players away, 3 in the Tobias Harris deal, and then, they traded Bradley, the Grizzlies, and they got back Temple and JaMychal Green. So you're talking about a whole new team there, and there may be some offensive cohesiveness, and we talked about this on videos with Brian. A lot of times I look to play more overs when people come. Yeah, you can learn plays on offense, and when you're a good offensive player, Preston, the sports cheetah, talked about Tobias with Philadelphia, how he thinks he's going to be the perfect fit because he's that off guard that can just fit into a position and doesn't have to play a set spot. But it's the defensive side of the ball. We're now getting to the point where teams are going to start to play defense. I'm going to go back, and I mentioned LeBron and Cleveland often because that was someone I followed, someone I went to a lot of games and watched games and listened to what LeBron said pre-game, what they did during the game, and what they said post-game. All of those are important because people can say things, and then those things don't pan out on the court. But you're also going to see teams start to play defense now. Now's the time when you start working on your defense to get into playoff mode. We see Golden State doing that a little bit. Well, their offense is so good that you don't notice that the defense is also starting to play to an elite level. They have all their pieces back now. So, you're going to see teams playing that role. And when teams get the trade and have to work out the defense, these new players that may be offensive players may be a liability on defense to start.
And speaking about LeBron, you followed him for his whole career, obviously, with Cleveland, then at Miami, back to Cleveland, and now in L.A., how do you gauge the mindset of the Lakers players? Everybody and their brother on it. If your name wasn't LeBron, your name came up in trade talks during the trade deadline. As they, everybody was trying to make the push for Anthony Davis, and then we see the story today. The NBA beat writer Windhorst said that
used to be the Cavs beat writer. He worked for an Akron newspaper and moved his way up now to be, an NBA overall writer. Yeah,
and he's a guy that said that this was just all smokescreen by the Pelicans. That they felt that the Lakers kind of forced their hand with tampering and getting this Anthony Davis trade accelerated, and him forcing the issue, and they weren't happy about it. And he said he's reporting that he believed that they had no intention at all of ever trading him to the Lakers, and that they did all of this and just kept having them go back and forth with offers to name players just to kind of screw with the Lakers for what they felt they did to them. And if you're in a locker room, it's got to be unsettling as you're a young player and you don't know you're going to be here, you're going to be gone, you're not. Do they, were they really considering trading you? What do they think about you? That's got to mess with your psyche, I think.
Well, we probably saw that come to its peak at Indiana. You lose the game 136-94, and that shows you weren't focused. And yes, players were on the free throw line, and the Pacer fans were shooting. LeBron's going to trade you, going back to the days where Cleveland was basically the GM. I mean, LeBron was the GM in Cleveland. I don't know if that's the same case in L.A. where he is the GM, but I can tell you that there's probably discussions between him and the coach and the GM of what moves are going to be made, because obviously you want to keep him happy. But, moving forward is this. I think as we speak, LeBron's playing at Boston tonight, and it's the Kyrie matchup, and that's going to be intriguing, where I'm going to watch my first NBA regular season game in a long time just to see what happens on the court when those two are playing against each other. But, the Lakers, LeBron can win enough games by himself, I think, to get to the Lakers in a playoff position. And the question is, yes, you're building to get AD in the summer, or yes, you're building to get another, Corver or somebody that can come in. But do you want to not make the playoffs and get a better draft choice, or make a playoffs? I think with LeBron, he knows, and he saw with the Cavs, the experience that a playoff run or even a playoff series can make. And he has such a young team at LA that I think he's going to start having some monster games down the stretch, getting enough wins to get to the Lakers to the playoffs. So when you have them in a pick'em type situation, or you have them as a small favorite or a small dog, I'll keep my eye on LeBron. If you start seeing him post some 40-10 games and taking over games and not worrying about following the plays, that would be the buy sign for me that he wants this team to get to the playoffs. Even if they lose to Golden State in the first series, that experience will move forward to next season when he hopefully has a few more veterans with all the young people around him.
All right, good stuff there. Let's talk about some money earners and money burners. I'm going to talk about the top 5 teams in the NBA for making money this year. This is if you blindly just bet them every game, Ralph, $100 each game. This is what you would be up. And then you're going to counter with me, and it's always, and we know in our business, it's what have you done for me lately?
And especially in the NBA. There's no more sport more than the NBA, where a team can be so different from November to January because who they're resting, who they're playing, what their rotation is, how many minutes they're playing. Are they on a road trip or home? So especially in that sport.
And now the teams are actually jockeying. This is that final run, to set yourself up for the playoffs, where you're going to be positioned and everything. So, but for the season, and this one's a surprise to me, the Dallas Mavericks are the money maker. They're the top money maker this NBA season. If you bet them $100 a game all season long, right now you'd have $1,310 in your pocket with them.
What if I tell you that Dallas Mavericks are also number 1 over the last 4 weeks? I did the last 28 days from Thursday, January 10th till tonight. Dallas 10-2 against the spread in that stretch as well.
So good stuff there, showing the consistency of all season long.
Again, a team people don't look at. Dirk's on his way out, and who do they have, and they don't really have a talent. It shows that if you play as a team in the NBA, you're going to cover a lot of games.
Well, we all know about the Greek Freak in Milwaukee, and he's carrying his team. They are the second most profitable team on the season, and they're plus $900 if you flat bet them all season long so far. And this is a team that plays good defense, and they're winning by margins, and that's going to cover spreads.
Yeah, it's over the last 4 weeks, they're number 4. They're 9-4. So you have a young team that has to learn how to win, that isn't taking anything for granted, with a young player who is a NBA superstar right now.
The number 3 team is a surprise team for the season, and I'm going to probably guess that they're not still in the top 5. I'm not looking at your sheet. You printed it out for me, but I'm looking season-wise, and then I'll explain why, and we'll see. I'm going to go with Sacramento here. They're the number 3 team. They would have made you $570 for the season flat betting them.
Sacramento over the last 4 weeks right now is I just lost them. They're 7-5, 58%. They're about number 7 or 8 on the list. So again, still has shown a profit.
Still has shown a profit. This is one of those teams that's a young team,
and with a loss last night. So they were 7-4. They lost to Houston last night. So that's a big difference in the percentages.
Absolutely, and it's a team that, as we go further in the season, they're not as deep as some other teams. So if they get some injuries, it's going to affect them. And I think at the beginning of the season, they were way undervalued, and they caught some teams looking past them thinking, hey, this is the same old Kings. They're no good, but this team actually has some talent, young talent, but they're getting better. But I don't think teams are now going in there and just thinking it's a layup for an easy win. So that's one that could change. Oklahoma City. This is a team that's playing better this season as far as covering the spread. They have been notoriously a bad favorite, but if you flat bet them right now, you're up $470 for the season.
I'm surprised this list is so close. Over the last 4 weeks, they're number 5 at 8-4, 67%.
And here's one for the season, but recently they haven't been covering, so I'm pretty sure they're not going to be in your top 5. But that is the San Antonio Spurs. For the season, Pop's got this team. You lost all the superstars and everything, but still they're plus $460 for the season.
The Spurs are 5-8, so they're in the bottom 5 or bottom 7, let's say. And one team you're not going to be surprised. That's number 2 over the last 4 weeks. The Golden State Warriors, 8-3-1, now showing their might, and they're playing well. So we talked about that. So,
which for the season, Golden State flat betting them, you're minus $680.
Marco, my bottom 5 teams from the bottom for the last 4 weeks: the Heat, the Knicks, the Rockets, the Bulls, and the Timberwolves and Lakers are tied. So those are my bottom 6 teams. What are your bottom 6?
The bottom teams, the Washington Wizards. You're minus $1,210 flat betting them. Right behind them, Phoenix, who is looks like full-blown Tankapalooza, is our buddy Gil Alexander.
Are they trying to catch the Cavs?
They're minus.
Are they ahead of the Cavs now?
They're minus 1,120 for the season. Memphis is minus 900. The Bulls are minus 890, along with the Lakers minus 890. So I think that, your numbers of the last 4 weeks are going to be more relevant now than even any other time, because if these teams are in tank mode, they're going to continue to be so as they jockey for position to get that number 1 and number 2 pick, as everybody's going to be looking at the 2 guys from Duke.
Marco, let's look at 3 ATS categories over the last 4 weeks, okay? Again, we talked about the last 4 weeks, and we know it's important. I'm going to run down. We're going to go home, away, and off a straight-up loss. I'm going to give the top 5, and then you give the bottom 5. I'm going to start at the best team. You start at the worst team and go backwards. So first, let's look over the last 4 weeks, what they've done with an ATS number at home. The Kings, you talked about, 5-1. The Mavericks, 5-1. Trailblazers, 4-1-1. Warriors, 3-1-1. The Nuggets, 5-2. So teams we talked about very good at home. Tell us about the worst ATS teams at home.
Well, the last 4 weeks, the Bulls are 0-4-1 at home. The Heat, 0-4-1 at home. The Clippers, and they just made wholesale changes, 1-6 their last 7 games at home. 1-5 last 6 games for the Spurs, and the Timberwolves 1-5-1. So again, those teams that are not playing good right now, and it's happening at home when they're, most of them would be laying points up. The Bulls, bad team, so not so much.
Well, the Mavericks, we know, were 10-2 the last 4 weeks, so we know they were both good on home and on the road. Mavericks, over the last 4 weeks, 5-1 on the road. Again, only 6 road games, shows you they haven't played many. The Bucks, 7-2 ATS. Pelicans, 6-2-1. Hawks, 5-2-1. And the Warriors, 5-2 on the road.
Yeah, bottom end here, and this is a team that had been playing well early in the season. Now the lines makers caught up to them, but the Nuggets 0-6-1 last 7 on the road.
And again, the Nuggets are one of those teams that are 27-4 straight up at home.
Yeah.
Their record is so good; they have the 4th best record because of that home edge and the altitude. So playing against them on the road, you're finding an edge.
Absolutely. And then rounding out the rest of the bottom of the list, you got the Wizards at 1-3. You've got the Celtics at 1-3-1. You've got the Rockets at 2-5. Not good numbers there on the bottom. The one, like I said, that stands out and surprises me the most is the Denver. That it's such, you talk about the home-road dichotomy. Boy, as you said, they are the number 1 split there. And as far as the Wizards go, well, they're just playing awful right now. Doesn't matter where they're at.
Yeah, I think the Wizards were in flux. I wouldn't be surprised to see them playing better now that Wall's not back. They kept waiting for Wall to get healthy, and he just wasn't getting healthy, and all of a sudden they find out he has a ruptured tendon or ACL. So all of a sudden, now at least you're playing on the court. You're not worrying about him coming back, and you're probably making some wholesale changes knowing that this is the team you have moving forward. I just wanted to give an off category, off a straight-up loss. The couple teams that are at top at 100%, well, that's because they don't lose very much and they bounce back. Warriors 1-0. That's in the last month. Warriors, 1 loss.
Jeez.
1 straight-up loss. They're 1-0. The Bucks 2-0. The Jazz 3-0. The Thunder 3-1. The Kings 3-1. The Pelicans 6-2-1. So the only one that surprises me there is the Kings. The Kings are a team that, like you said, is playing better, but they've bounced back off a straight-up loss going 3-1 ATS.
Yeah, and the bottom of the list is Minnesota off a loss 1-5. You got the Raptors off a loss of 1-3.
That one surprises me.
Because you would think, well, then the next one's going to surprise you too, and that's the Celtics. You got 2 good teams that you would think would, be in bounce back mode.
You had talked before about perhaps Toronto resting Kawhi on the second off a loss.
Yeah.
Maybe they lose the first and it doesn't matter. I don't know those situations.
And you've got the Heat at 2-5, and then the Knicks at 4-8. And I think right now the Knicks, with when they were trying, with the poor I forget
Porzingis.
Yeah, Porzingis and everything there. This is a team that they're going to be. I think.
Well, they said they're done. We're tanking.
Right.
We're good at salary cap. We have enough money for 2 max players.
Yeah.
We're going to finish the season, get a high draft choice, and hopefully we get
sign 2 people.
Kyrie Irving and AD to come to us. I mean, that's their goal right now. So. And let's quickly just look at the over-unders over the last 4 weeks. I'll read the top over teams. You, if you would, just read the top under teams. These are the numbers for the last 4 weeks, over-under. Thunder 10-2. Again, the first number's the over, the second number's the under. Thunder 10-2, Trailblazers 8-2-1, Hawks 9-3, Nuggets 10-4, Spurs 9-4.
Yeah, and you look at the bottom teams there. You've got the Knicks 2-10 to the under.
I'll tell you what, they have no offense now without Porzingis. I had looked and I used them on a play. They had 18 straight games where they hadn't topped 40-something% shooting.
You've got the Kings 2-9 to the under. You've got the Pistons at 3-10 to the under. You've got the Mavericks 3-9 to the under. And you've got the Clippers 4-9 to the under. Now, look at the surprise here with the 2 of the teams that are in the under list, or 2 of the teams that have been successful this year against the point spread.
Surprise, because they actually play defense. Yeah,
it's the Mavericks and it's the Kings.
Yeah,
so that's something. Is not that these are playoff teams, but again. Defense wins games.
Yeah, I mean, teams are so used to right now going out and teams not playing defense. All of a sudden, you face the teams like the Mavs that are playing defense, and what happens? The Mavs cover, the game goes under. Start looking at some correlated parlays. Over-under at home. Trailblazers 5-0-1. Nuggets at home 7-0. The Nuggets have learned that when teams come in tired and they're playing in altitude, they press the pace. That's why they're good at home. They use it to their advantage, and they run the ball.
And it makes absolute sense to do so. But on the same token, that's also why probably they're not as good on the road, especially because on the road you're more apt to have those 3-game and 4-night situations when you're on the road. And this is a team that they've run themselves out of the building. They get acclimated obviously to their altitude, but you're still extending your body, playing at a faster pace, so that whenever they play their 3 and 4 nights or something on the road, they become the team for themselves on the road as teams are coming into their building.
Rockets, no surprise, 5-1-1 with Capella out. They don't play defense. Thunder 5-1, and then the Hawks 3-1.
Yeah, surprisingly on the bottom end, teams at home, Lakers 1-5 to the under. It's not the greatest show on earth, their Showtime in L.A. right now. And, of course, a lot of that, LeBron just came back. So, they had to work for points without LeBron
they
in the
lineup.
They
had no scores. Yeah, they were challenged.
You've got the Raptors at 1-5 to the under at home. That doesn't surprise me. They are a good defensive team. Cavaliers 1-4 to the under at home. And that's another team that they struggle right now to find people to score.
Kevin Love's been gone for so long. I think he's finally ready to come back now. So
the last one at home, look at the Knicks, 2-7, and that's only going to get worse for them to the under at home.
Absolutely. And finally, last category we're going to talk about, last 4 weeks, over-under records on the road. The Jazz 3-0, the Spurs 6-1, the Thunder 5-1, the Magic 4-1, the Wizards 6-1. And you see, I mean, you look at the disparity over the last 4 weeks. The Magic are 4-1 on the road. The Jazz are 3-0. So that means in a month, the Jazz have only played 3 road games, where the next team, the Hawks, are 6-2. They've played 8. So again, you have to look at the schedule when you're analyzing this data. Tell us about the under teams to play over the last 4 weeks on the road.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. There is a trio of 4 teams that if you just played unders with these 4 teams, you would be 19-0. The bottom 4. Look at that. 0-3 with the Knicks. If you're taking the under, you're 3-0. You're taking the under on the Kings. You're 5-1. That makes them 5-1 on the under. 5-0 on the under with the Celtics. 6-0 with the under on the Pistons. You add that up, that's a 19-0 with that cluster of 4 teams. And then if you want to go up to the Clippers, throw them in at 1-6, and you've got the 76ers at 1-5. So some pretty dramatic numbers there.
And
with
again,
the unders.
You know, when you're looking at a game, take these into consideration, but don't make your know-it-all. You're going to have another flux. We're going to see now these trade deadlines, and teams are starting to get closer to the playoffs, and teams that are in that 6 through 12 spot may start playing more defense. So you know what your really good teams are going to do. You know what your really bad teams are going to do. It's those ones in the middle that, yes, these numbers are over the last 4 weeks, but they continue to fluctuate, and they will continue to fluctuate.
All right, Ralph, great segment there for Handicappers Corner this week. We like to use that segment to dive into some numbers to help you and some theories that, might support why trends are going a certain way. We're going to step out for a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at some of this weekend's biggest college basketball and NBA games. That's up next on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. Before we head into this weekend's previews, I want to tell you this segment is sponsored by wager.eu. Get a 50% sign-up bonus using promo code WT50 when signing up. This offer is exclusive to our WagerTalk Podcast listeners. All right, Ralph, big night, Friday night in Ohio. It is the battle between Kent State and Akron. Most people don't realize that Kent State and Akron are probably 2 of the closest schools in proximity. How much separates them?
7 miles.
7 miles
yeah,
separate them?
I think they are the most. We did it at least for football. They were the most. There may be some basketball one. I mean,
Pitt and Duquesne's pretty close, too.
Yeah, you have Pitt, Duquesne, you have the Big Five in Philly, and you have those 3 teams in Buffalo, Siena, Buffalo, and Canisius. I don't know how close they are as well. But when we're talking...
And Niagara's up there, too, right?
When we're talking football, they are the closest, and it's the wagon wheel rivalry. And
what does that mean?
Well, it was a wagon wheel back when, you used to have the wagon wheels and the carts, and these are 2 old colleges, and but I don't know what it means.
They would bring the beer in for the frat parties on wagon wheels?
Come on. They had mead back then. It wasn't beer. But, the thing is that, we talk about Duke, North Carolina, but for these kids, I mean, this is that type of rivalry. You watch a football game, there may only be 2,000 people in the stands when you watch Kent State and Akron. But after that last after those last seconds click off, they run to go get that trophy. It's a big deal for these kids. They all grew up in the same areas. They know each other. They played high school against each other. So, and the other thing is, this is a Friday game, and it's not a very strong Friday card. That's why we're talking about this. But it is an ESPNU game. So, ESPNU means nothing for the major conferences. But when you're a MAC team and you're playing Friday and you have the eyes on you and the ESPN cameras in town, it's a big deal. It is offense against defense. Akron is a team that I thought would play much better this year than they are under John Grossi. They're 13-9, and they already have 4 losses in conference play. But they do play shutdown defense. They have a top 40 defense. Their offense is inept. Kent State's on the opposite side. Kent State comes in at 17-5, playing well, with their conference losses against Bowling Green, who right now looks to be the second best team in the conference, on the road at Eastern Michigan, who's one of the best teams, and home against Buffalo. So you have a clear situation where Kent State is going to win this game. The Ken Palm number on this game is 6. And with I think Akron being able to slow down Kent State a little bit, my number is 5. So depending on where it comes, if Akron comes +7 or more, I don't think they will. But there's been enough people that have been burned by the Akron stretch down the late that I make the game at 5 and would look at Akron as a defensive home dog plus a touchdown or more.
Touchdown or more in this one. All right, well,
defensive dogs is football, right? So
here's what I'm just, you said about the strength and the weakness. You said that Akron's offense is inept. The last 5 games, they can't shoot the ball in the ocean, Ralph. They've shot 39% or less in 4 of their last 5 games. Against Toledo, last time out, they only shot 28% for the game.
That's bad.
That's real bad, okay? And this Kent State team, they do like to go a quicker tempo. And here's the thing. It's all good for Akron if they can keep this game at the slow pace and can make some shots. But if Kent State gets some separation, I just think this can get ugly. I lean to the Kent State side here. I hate to go against a home dog in a rivalry, but I just can't back this Akron team right now.
I will mention that the last 6 in the series have gone under the total.
Okay.
So, Marco, let's talk some Friday NBA. We've talked about Denver in the earlier segment. We talked about how they are good at home, and now they're on the road. Philly, we know, traded for the Clippers' number 1 scorer, Tobias Harris. He's now on there. Philly, we know, now got rid of Fultz and traded him, and we know he's not going to be part of the team. Tell us what you make of this Friday night NBA matchup, Denver at Philadelphia.
This is, we talked about this one on videos yesterday, and I'm going to stay with the same thought. Right now, because of the big changes that Philadelphia made, I think they're going to come in a little bit overpriced on Friday night for this game. Denver's on the end of a final game of a 4-game road trip. We know they don't play well on the road, but I think they're going to get too many points here, especially the way they've been playing recently. You're going to get some added bias to them because they've not been playing well. And for me, I've got to go ahead and look at this one, and I got to take the inflated number that we're coming out here. I'm expecting to get probably 6 points in this game. In fact, we can, while we're...
It's not up yet.
It's not up yet. I was just going to go.
The other games are up, but that game is not up yet.
Because they don't know what to do with they're going to have trouble with adjusting these numbers. And so that's the buy side. I think that at +5 or more, I like the Denver side here to keep it close. They'll have the continuity with their team, whereas Philadelphia is going to be in a little bit of a transition, getting the guys into the lineup.
Well, a couple of ATS numbers in this game. Philadelphia has been a good home favorite. They are 12-6 their last 18 as a home favorite or 5 or more. And you talked about the Nuggets on the road. Well, 2-11-1 ATS their last 14 road games. You also have Denver playing their 4th game on the road. So, it's a situation where you have Philly that is coming in, and Philly is also off a loss in their last game, that with this first game, I made the number 7, and I would take Philly at -6 or less, depending on where the number works out. So we're both in that same range, but we're both in that same range with, I think, you leaning towards Denver, hoping to get more, me leaning with Philly, hoping to lay less.
So it's going to come right on the number, and neither one of us is going to have a play. One thing I will point out in this one is you mentioned Philly come home off of that long road trip, and they lost their first game, which was a game for – there's 4 teams in the East. Let's face it. It's Toronto, it's Milwaukee, it's Philly, and it's Boston. They just come off that game with Toronto, and they got the Lakers up next with LeBron. Even though Denver's a better team, name-wise, it's LeBron and the Lakers coming to town next. So this would be a little bit of a sandwich game. I would like the sandwich situation better if they would have beaten Toronto. Then it would have been a great sandwich. But coming off the loss, they should be focused here, and there's going to be the excitement of dressing the new players for the first time.
Well, let me go back further. It's actually back-to-back losses because they went to Golden State. They beat Golden State. They had the letdown against Sacramento, and then they played Toronto at home. So not only are they off a previous home loss, they're off rare back-to-back loss situations, which they haven't had, which may make me add another point to my line as we're talking. All
right. Well, there you go. We're both on the fence in this one, but Ralph leans to Philly. I lean to Denver. Let's head to Saturday college basketball. And, Ralph, we got a lot of good games on Saturday. We'll get to the best one in a moment, but this is going to be a good game. Big East, and boy, do I miss the old days of the Big East. That was I loved watching
Georgetown, Syracuse,
Pitt, West Virginia, Georgetown, Syracuse, all of those games. And the thing of it is, those Big East teams used to just bang on one another. And the problem with the Big East tournament, the conference tournament, is by the time those teams came out of that tournament, they were so beat up and tired from themselves. A lot of times we saw these teams make early exits in the big dance because of it. But now we got the revamped Big East of the last few years. Villanova's been the team to beat, defending national champ, obviously. Started the season out slow. We know how that goes with the Dukes and the North Carolinas and the Kansases, the Kentuckys. But now Villanova is experiencing something of that. They had how many players off of last year's team go to the NBA? 3 or 4?
They had 4 drafted, along with Duke had 4 and Kansas had 4. So all 3 of those teams lost 4 players that signed NBA contracts.
You had Villanova start the season a little slow to be expected. You don't have anybody back. You've got to have some growing pains. But, boy, have they shifted gears right now. They're playing their best basketball of the season, rolling and winning 10 in a row. How do you see them going into this one against Marquette?
Villanova was always an efficient offense, but they always had a solid defense. This year they're a little bit different. They don't have that same defensive presence. They have a lot of younger guys, but they still play very slow tempo. I mentioned on some other things I did, I think Jay Wright is worthy of Coach of the Year, taking what he lost. Kentucky, and you're used to being Kentucky Duke. You're used to getting talent that's going to be in the NBA next year. You know that. But he lost seniors that were NBA. So you had a lot of guys playing a lot of minutes for a lot of years, and losing them is so much different than Barrett and Zion Williamson at Duke being one and dones after a year. So Villanova, I think, has done an incredible job. But what it's done, it's brought them back to the middle level. They're like a 20 team, and Marquette's in that 25 to 30 range. They're very close as the top 2 teams in the Big East. But you look at Marquette. Marquette's 13-4 against the spread. 2 of those losses were to St. John's. They lost to St. John's on the road, and they just lost to St. John's at home. Villanova, how's this for a stat? Since December 8th, 2012, if you bet Villanova every game, you are 146 and 83, 63.8%. That shows you that Villanova has the quality teams. Yes, they've been a national champ, but they still don't have that Vegas love that a Duke has or a Kentucky has or a Kansas when they go nuts and wins 12 straight games. There's still value playing against them. And here's one note I want to tell you about. Marquette, we know, is a much improved team. They're going to be a top 3 or 4 seed in the tournament. they are off a home loss. They don't lose at home often, but the last 2 times they lost at home, they not only lost the next game straight up, they lost against the spread, and the last 3 times over the last 2 years they've lost at home, they failed to cover the next game. So it's not one of those automatics. Oh my God, Marquette's playing a huge rival, biggest home game, they're off a loss, they're going to bounce back.
Yeah, well, I do like Marquette, but me and you's going to be kind of leaning the other ways this week here. I like Marquette to get the job done here. As good as Villanova's been playing, it's tough to step in front of them. And you talked about their offense being better this year, Villanova. They are making 11 three-pointers this year. They're one of the top teams in the country for made threes per game, and that helps them a lot. But Marquette plays good defense. They're only allowing 40% shooting on the season. And this Marquette team, they've played the 35th toughest schedule in the country. They're 16-2 straight up their last 18 games. And as you pointed out, both of those losses were to the same team, St. John's. So this is a team that's on a 16-game win streak if you're not playing St. John's. This is going to be a short number. I'm projecting the line to be 2. I don't know what you had it at.
I just want to jump in. We're not against each other on this game. I am not on Villanova.
Okay.
But I'm not going to lay points with Marquette.
All right.
If Marquette was a pick or a dog, I would lean with them. I don't think they'll be that in this role. So just to be clear, right. I'm with you. I think they're going to have an awesome home crowd. It'd be fun to be in Milwaukee this week. But you are on Marquette this week.
I am Marquette. I think the line's going to be 2. I have Marquette winning by 5. So if it does come 2 or less, I'm there. If it comes higher than that, then I'm gonna be worried about it.
Let's look at an ACC game, and we're going to talk about the big ACC game in a minute. But I'll tell you what, this isn't a bad pregame. And talking about another Coach of the Year potential, Chris Mack overachieved at Xavier, again, an Ohio guy that I followed, being from Ohio and an Ohio college. What he did at Xavier, he didn't get those 5-star recruits. He rarely got 4-star recruits, but he had Xavier in the mix all the time. Now he goes to Louisville and takes over this team that shouldn't be 17-6, but they are. And, yes, they're 17-6, but I'll tell you what, I don't know if anyone has 6 better losses than them. Your losses are to Tennessee, going to be a number 1 seed. Marquette, we just talked about, in a neutral setting. They lost to Indiana when Indiana was still playing like a team. Lost to Kentucky, lost to North Carolina, and the only bad loss was at Pittsburgh, which we know is an improving team and in overtime. So, I look at this Louisville squad, and they're 12-3 ATS on the road. Florida State is 2-7 ATS at home. Florida State is struggling to get margin, and if you look at Florida State's schedule, it's tough to say you play 6 bad, in quotation, air quotes, in a row in the ACC. But I'll tell you what, their last 6 games where they're 4-2, Pittsburgh, Boston College, Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech, Syracuse. Yes, Clemson's good. Yes, Syracuse is good. But you're talking all the middle to bottom range teams. Now Florida State is going to face one of the better teams at home after having faced that Syracuse defense and on the road. I like Louisville in this game.
Well, we are going to disagree again, my friend, and I'm on Florida State here. The Louisville schedule, I can't argue with you. They've played the 14th toughest schedule in the country. But even though Florida State has run through, as you said, the middle of the road to bottom of the ACC in recent games, they still have played the 30th toughest schedule in the country. And that 3-game losing streak that they had, well, the first game was to Duke, and that was that heartbreaker. Then they went to Pittsburgh 2 days, from Saturday to Monday, and I was all over Pitt in that game because there was just no way, after almost upsetting Duke at home, lose on the buzzer beater like they did, that they were going to be able to go to Pitt and play that upstart team.
And that was a Saturday-Monday situation, so that makes it even tougher, a 48-hour turnaround.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they had one more carryover, the Boston College game. But since then, now they've righted the ship. They're back on the winning streak, winning 4 in a row. I think they're going to continue that momentum at home in this one. Louisville playing good basketball, and I think when the number pops up on Saturday in this game and people see Louisville getting points, the way they've been playing, they're going to be a little excited to want to jump in there and take that live dog. But check out who Louisville, they're coming off an upset of Virginia Tech, a very good Virginia Tech team. And who do they got up next? They got Duke on the horizon. Little sandwich spot here. I'm going to go with Florida State to get the job done. I'm laying the points with the Seminoles.
I will be much more excited if they are grabbing points. I think the game comes pick, and if Louisville is getting 3 or more, I'm even stronger on them.
All right, we'll see how that turns out. My projected line is Florida State -2 in the game, so I think they're going to come that small dog. We shall see how much credit they give them for that. Just the big win at Virginia Tech.
Marco, I'm going to go back to you on this game because I know this is your team. You are in love with the Cavaliers, and I understand why. I have them as my number 3 power-rated team, just behind Duke and the Zags. I think you have them number 1.
I have them 1, Duke 2, Gonzaga 3. So we have the same top 3. We just have them mixed up.
I think the world has the same top 3. Tennessee's getting close, but they're still not there yet. And, let's just remind our listeners, Duke was without their point guard back in the first meeting. Virginia was getting 3 or 3.5. Got a late bucket. I think it was a 72-70 final. So, hey, if Virginia lost a game and they went to Duke and lost by a bucket and covered, that's got to be a good loss. Tell us why you are picking these Cavalier team to go a long, long way in the tournament.
Well, first of all, I said the embarrassment of last year, the first round, losing to the 16 seed, okay? That is something that this team's had to live with all off season. You lose a game like that, you have an opportunity like they did last year, to run deep in the tournament, and basically you pissed it away in the first round. That's hard to get over. Then you look at this team. They come in, they're in the conference. They're always going to be the second fiddle, third fiddle to Duke and North Carolina, so to speak. But as we mentioned when we did the video on this one, Virginia Tech's not the rivalry for Virginia. Yes, it's a rivalry. Yes, they get up for it, but Virginia Tech gets up way more for that rivalry. The rivalry has become Virginia and Duke for Virginia. This is the team that they have the bullseye on. That's the team they want to, supplant as the top team in the ACC. And why do I say that? Well, obviously because of the recent history, how these teams have played the last few years. But look at the fact that we talked about when teams play their rival. Generally, it's not uncommon for the teams to schedule that as being the only game they play in a 7-day period, is that game against your rival, because you get up for it and everything else. Well, guess who Virginia used their 7-day off with? It is this one with Duke. They haven't played since last Saturday. Duke played during the week. I think Virginia, with the week to prepare, sights set on them. I projected the line to come out at 4. You guys said I'm high, and yesterday I was playing cards. We had talked.
You were high with the line, or you were physically high because you went to the cannabis store?
Well, you know what? This time, Your Honor, I'm going to plead my Fifth Amendment rights. But I was sitting at the poker table because we had the talk with Preston. He didn't think it'd come that high. You didn't think it would come that high, but I said I'm prepared for it to come that high. I would like it to come lower so I could jump in. And he texted me yesterday. Caesars released some advanced lines for games. One of them was this one on Saturday, and they had Virginia at 1.5. And he said, in case you want to get some of that 1.5, because you were talking Virginia at 4. Well, I did. I jumped on and got some of that 1.5 with Virginia. So we'll see what it actually comes out around town. But I'm on Virginia here. This is a team. They're number 1 in points allowed, 52.9. They are the number 4 offensively, number 4 shooting, allowing just 37%. But this is a team that, unlike the other Virginia teams that have always been good defensively, they can play offensively. They're shooting 47.7% for the season, for the game, and from 3-point range, 39.4 from three-point range, which that is not Virginia basketball, and that is what's making them so tough. You play the games now, you don't, laying the big numbers that you were with Virginia in the past. When you only score 60 points, Ralph, a lot of times it's hard to cover double digits. Now you start dropping threes like they are and playing tenacious defense. This team's going to be a hard out all the way through.
A couple numbers. I will not be on either side. I will be a fan watching this game. And, Duke, I do want to mention, 8, 24-1 over under their last 33 games. That's 25% to the under. So, look at Duke if you're thinking unders. And also, Marco, just a number to talk about. We've talked about Virginia a few times on different radio shows or doing videos, and you talked about their offense and their efficiency. And, Ken Pom has them, number 5, I think, this year, and last year they were 30. But when I like looking at effective field goal percentage as well, because it's telling you what they're doing on the court. And, last year they were number 98 effective field goal percentage. This year they're 25. So marked improvement, as you said, on that offensive side of the ball. But like you said, I am going to just go with Marco's advice in this game. I will not be on either side. But it is a college game that I will be watching very closely.
All right, from the game of the season in the ACC.
Can we just jump back one more second? Because I just want to tell our listeners one thing. If Virginia does get revenge against Duke, they do go to North Carolina Monday.
There would be very interesting spot.
So you want to talk about a sandwich spot. Yeah. You're looking at a potential letdown spot for Virginia.
Good point there. And from the biggest game in the ACC, let's go to the biggest game in the AAC. And we've got Cincinnati at Houston on Sunday, and this one should be a fun one.
It might be the biggest game in the I like this UCF game. We are actually recording this on Thursday
night.
And tonight, Houston is at UCF. Houston hasn't played any road games. UCF is one of the tallest teams in the country with Taco Flats. Yeah. Taco Flats was my first job, a taco restaurant in Cleveland. So now I digress.
Yeah.
But, the thing about me is Cincinnati is a home road dichotomy team, and I've played against them a few times on the road. Yeah, they went to Temple. They only won by 4. They went to Wichita. That game was close. They ended up winning by 11. They lost at East Carolina. They had to come back to play Tulsa. I really like this Houston spot. I would lay up to maybe 7 with Houston if they're coming off a loss against UCF and then playing Cincinnati back at home. They have one of the strongest home centers. Those people here in Vegas know the name well. It's the Fertittis.
Okay.
That own the Rockets.
Oh, the Rockets
that built the new stadium
Golden Nugget.
Yeah, well, the Rockets fan. Yeah. Yep. So they own the Rockets, so they're really involved in Houston, and they built Houston this new arena, which they now have a 21 or 22 game home winning streak, and it's really meant something. I've watched a few Houston games, and Kelvin Sampson has talked about what a home edge the Houston Cougars now have. And he talked about it early in the year, and he said, anyone can sell out. They had a couple big teams came there. Oregon came there or LSU came there. But he said, when we sold out against Texas Rio Grande Valley and the crowd was intense and loud, he goes, that's when I knew I finally had a home court edge this year. So the home road dichotomy of Cincinnati, not able to shoot on the road. Houston, if they come off a win against UCF, I probably won't play the game because I'm only looking at the Houston side. If they come off a loss against UCF back at home against Cincinnati, I will favor the Cougars.
Well, I do lean to Houston here. I'm projecting the line to be Houston -6 in this game. And you know what? I look at this Houston team, and you talk about how good they are at home. Well, throw in this team plays such good defense. They're number 2 in the country. Defensive shooting percentage at 36% per game. They're also number 6 in points allowed. They're allowing just 60 points per game. You play great defense and you have a home floor like that where you're subject to big runs. The crowd gets in it and all of a sudden, you go on a 6-0, 8-0 spurt, in the game, and you got shut down defense. Those spurts can lead you to a blowout for that other, against that other team. I like them here. It'll be crazy on Sunday, and the fact that it is a Sunday game, I lean to Houston really either if they win or lose tonight's game. More so, obviously, coming off the loss, you'll definitely have the focus with them. But this is a spot where Houston, I think they get Cincinnati. Cincinnati's been a good basketball team this year, but I just don't think they line up as good as this Houston team.
I'm guessing that's a CBS game, too.
It should be, yes.
Because, and I don't – Marco's looking that up as we –
Yeah, my schedule book ends on Saturday.
But you know what? That again, you have to remember – yes, these teams, everyone's on ESPN, but if it is that CBS game, which they do cover, the American Conference, it is going to be something extra special for the fans and the players having the big-time cameras there.
All right, that's going to wrap up this segment. We're going to step out for our final break of the evening, and when we return, it is best bet time. You're going to get a best bet from Ralph and a best bet from me. That's up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. This is the best bet segment. Before we get into a best bet from Ralph and myself, I want to tell you special offer if you guys want to pick up Ralph or me with the basketball, and it's an all-access package, so you get everything that we release during a 7-day period. Normally a 7-day package, $119. Right now you can get it for just $69 with this special offer. WT69. That's WT69, and you can get a 7-day package. That's less than $10 a day from Ralph or myself this week at WagerTalk. Just enter that coupon code at the checkout. All right, Ralph, we're going to go to you. You've got a college basketball total on Saturday. Who is it?
It's an SEC matchup, and it's Kentucky and Mississippi State. And Kentucky is a team that, we talked about Villanova with 4 players drafted, and Kentucky's that same situation. They lost 4 players, and they are young. Boy, are they young. They have a freshman point guard, freshman shooting guard, freshman small forward, sophomore power forward, and then Reed Travis is a center, the transfer from Stanford, but his first year here. So you have all these young kids that right now are on 9 straight wins. They're on 7 straight covers, but their road games, Georgia, an okay team. Auburn was an up-tempo team. Vanderbilt, and then Florida. And the Florida game is the game that I think is going to dictate how this game is played. That was a 65-54 score. They're a top 10 team on defense. On the road, they don't nearly shoot as well. Mississippi State is a team that has lost 12 straight to this foe. They're going to be fired up. They are coming off a brutal home loss to LSU, which was a very up-tempo game. Their defense has been a little bit lax, and Ben Howland talked about how they have to slow their pace a little bit and play better defense. So I think this is a game the total's going to open about 142, and I like this game under the total. Marco, tell us your best bet for this weekend.
It's one of the games that we talked about earlier, and I'm going to go to that Florida State side against Louisville. I just love the spot here. I know Louisville's playing good basketball, but they're coming off the big game against Virginia Tech. Tough to put up 2 big games like that again, especially with what they got on deck with Duke on the horizon. This Florida State team, they were winning before that game against Duke, in which they lost by 2 at the buzzer. Then they had that hangover effect going from a Saturday to a Monday on the road in Pittsburgh, and then played a 3rd straight bad game. But since then have rolled off 4 in a row. They're back on track. I like this team. I look for them to continue the momentum. That with you've got a hot team versus a team in a bad scheduling spot with a big game on deck. I'll go Florida State for my best bet. And that's going to wrap up this week's show. I want to thank our guest tonight, William Bernanke from CG Analytics, for stopping by and recapping the Super Bowl with us. Big thanks to my partner here, Ralph Michaels, for joining me in studio. Mark Seidel for making sure we sound good. Always a big shout out to our guy in Detroit, the man in the tracksuit, Johnny Detroit. He makes sure this podcast is available everywhere. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen on Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. And last but not least, thanks to you, our loyal listeners. We truly appreciate you taking the time each and every week to tune in and listen to us and comment on the show. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. You have a question. We love to hear from you. And for me, I'm Marco D'Angelo. Till next week, guys, let's cash some tickets.